rise and come to order. Please be seated.
Good morning, Judge. Judge, this is the state versus Sebastian Olivares-Coster, ABC 2009-201. Coster is in court with his attorneys, Mr. Moe and Randy Hood, for the purposes of pleading guilty to the offenses charged in the information. The defense has prepared an acknowledgement of waiver of rights by pleading guilty. I've looked at it. It will be given to the court if it's not already at the appropriate time. And I think that we're prepared to have him plead at this time.
Mr. Olivares-Coster, are you here today?
Yes, Your Honor.
I'll remind you that you've been charged by information with 3 crimes. You've been charged with 1 count of deliberate homicide and 2 counts of attempted deliberate homicide. The maximum possible punishment for those offenses is a prison term of not less than 2 years and more than life. Not less than 10 years or more than life for each one of those offenses. I'll also remind you, and there's also a maximum fine of, I think, $50,000 for each one of those offenses. I'll also remind you that you're not required to say anything about any of these charges, and anything you do say can be used against you by the county attorney. In general, there are 2 pleas that can be answered to the charges in the information: a plea of guilty and a plea of not guilty. A plea of guilty is an admission of the truth of the charge against you. In any event you plead guilty and the court accepts your plea of guilty, you will stand convicted of the offenses charged against you. And if you plead guilty, you will not be entitled to a jury trial, because in Montana, a jury is called only to consider the guilt or innocence of the defendant, and if you plead guilty, then there's no question as to your guilt. A plea of not guilty is a denial of the truth of the charge. If you disagree with any part of the information, all of the information, or if you simply wish to require the state to prove the charges against you beyond a reasonable doubt, as it is your right to do, you must take that by a plea of not guilty. Do you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
And before entering your plea, I'll advise you of the following rights that you have. You're entitled to a fair, speedy, and impartial trial by jury. You're entitled to, and the state must prove the charges against you beyond a reasonable doubt. You have the right to confront your accusers and to cross-examine any witnesses who testify against you. You have the right to produce any witnesses to testify on your behalf. You may refuse to testify, and you may refuse to answer any individual questions that may tend to incriminate you. If you go to trial, you might be found guilty of a lesser-included crime. That means that a jury might find that you're innocent of one of these charges, but that you're guilty of a less serious crime. And pending the outcome of the trial, you have the right to secure bail to release you from custody. The amount of that bail would be determined by me. Do you understand those rights that you have?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you satisfied with your attorneys?
Yes.
Are you presently under the influence of any drugs, alcohol, or any person?
No, Your Honor.
What is your plea then to count 1 deliberate homicide?
Guilty.
And count 2 attempted deliberate homicide?
Guilty.
And count 3 attempted deliberate homicide?
Guilty.
Before accepting your plea to these charges, have you been coerced, threatened, or promised any benefits if you plead guilty, other than what might be contained in the plea agreement?
No, ma'am.
No one's forcing you to enter a plea today?
No.
And do you understand these charges against you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty to these charges, you have waived some of the rights that I've just told you?
Yes, Your Honor.
And if you plead guilty, you should be aware of additional restrictions that can be imposed upon you. You may be barred from certain occupations or professions. I can limit your right to parole or furlough. I can also designate you as being ineligible for parole or participation in supervised release. You could be prohibited from holding public office and from owning or carrying a dangerous weapon. You could also be limited as to your association with persons or groups. You could be required to pay restitution as part of your sentence. If you were not a United States citizen, a conviction could result in your deportation. And this conviction could affect a sentence that you might receive in the future for another offense that you might commit. Do you understand those additional restrictions?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you still want to plead guilty to these charges?
Yes.
Would you please explain to me in your own words, and it's my understanding that these happened all at the same time? On the same day?
That's correct, Your Honor.
That's correct.
Go ahead.
I shot and killed 1 person, and I shot and seriously injured 2 others, and I don't know why.
Based on that statement,
He needs to say something different, Your Honor. The requirement is that he acted purposely or knowingly to try to kill those 2 other people.
okay. Did you hear what the county attorney just said? We need a little bit more I already know all the details, but you need to put that on for the record. Did you know what you were doing at the time you did it?
Yes.
And did you, when you shot these people, did you intend to shoot them?
Yes, sir.
He needs to have, just not the act, he has to have the mental state to kill them.
No, I said he knew what he was doing. Yes.
He needs to say that it was his intent to kill them, Judge.
I thought he just did it, right?
He said he knew it was his intent to shoot them, not to kill them. There's a distinction.
What was your intent when you pulled the trigger to those fellows? What was going through your mind?
My intention when I shot was to kill them.
Okay.
Thank you, Judge.
Based on that statement, I'll accept your guilty plea to these charges, and we have to discuss sentencing and evaluations.
A few days ago, I learned that the defense would like the court to consider at sentencing whether the statute refers to as guilty but mentally ill. And the legislature recently addressed this issue, and the process from here is that I believe the court needs to direct that he be undergo an evaluation by the the director of Warren Springs State Hospital or her designee. And so I will be prepared an order directing his transport to the Warren Springs State Hospital for that evaluation.
The forensic eval was what, 45 days?
Your Honor, I had a discussion with Lou Thompson this morning. It's going to take 2 months.
Okay.
Sentencing is set for Friday, February 26, 2010 at 9 a.m.